Story 1. Just got our first child. So 1 o'clock, 1:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Edit. Thank you everyone for the kind words of encouragement. Story 2. I usually wake up at 4 a.m. Monday through Saturday. I run a commercial farm and aim to be there by 4:45 a.m. Then I head to my car garage and repair shop, which opens at 9 a.m. My workday often runs until 7 p.m. Sundays are my sleep-in days. I stay in bed until around 6 or 6:30 a.m. Story 3. I usually wake up at 11:58 p.m., 1 a.m., 2:36 a.m., 4:17 a.m., and around 5:28 a.m. Then, at 5:30 a.m. when my alarm goes off, I actually get up at 6 a.m., pour a cup of coffee, and cry. Story 4. Between 4 and 6 a.m., I need some alone time during the day, so I force myself into the schedule to get an hour or two to myself before everyone else wakes up. Story 5. I successfully changed my sleeping routine to waking up at 6 a.m. and going to bed at 9:30 p.m. without it having a professional necessity. Story 6. A few minutes before my alarm goes off at about 7 o'clock, I feed my dog. If I sleep in, she starts flapping her ears near my head to let me know it is time. Story 7. I wake up every morning between 5 and 6 without an alarm. I was a night owl my entire life, typically waking up around 12 or 1, but when I turned 31, an unintentional mental switch occurred. Now I am an early bird. Trading nightlife for the morning rise is an interesting change. Story 8. 6:20 for my first alarm, then 8:30. My work starts at 9. Yes, I have my first alarm when I want another 5 minutes of sleep, but it turns into 2 hours instead. Story 9. During the week at 4:30 a.m., I work as a commercial and industrial electrician. On weekends, I'm lucky if I can sleep in until 7 or 8, but here I am at 6 a.m., already up on a Sunday. Story 10. During the week, it depends on when I have to be at work, so anytime between 6:30 and 8 a.m. usually. On Sundays, it is between 7:30 and 8 a.m. to get ready for church at 9:30. Story 11:03 and 50 seconds a.m. Monday through Saturday. 5 a.m. Sunday. That is the latest my body lets me sleep. I go to bed around 8 p.m. every night. Story 12. I work Monday to Thursday from 4 a.m. to 12 p.m., so I am up at 3:05 a.m. On my days off, I still wake up early. Friday and Saturday, I can sleep in until 6 a.m. at the latest just because my body says get up. Story 13:04 and 50 seconds a.m. Hate it. I used to be a night owl and loved it, but the day shift works better for me at the moment, so now I am a day walker. Story 14. I am awake all night, then crash during the day. It is a habit I want to break but find it hard to do. Story 15. My cat tries to wake me up around 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. for food. I might get up and sit at my desk, but he is not getting his food until 5 a.m. He still insists that he should get it earlier. Story 16. I have a cat who sleeps with me and wakes me up between 4 and 5 o'clock. I guess she gets hungry at that time. Story 17. During the week, my daughter is at school, so I wake at 6:40 a.m. On weekends, I get a bit of a lie-in around 8 or 9 a.m., but I feel tired for the rest of the day. It is probably best to keep up the normal routine to avoid the tiredness I experience. Story 18:06 a.m. I live near a barangay hall, and they play our country's national anthem at 6 a.m. It is practically my alarm clock. Story 19. 40-year-old wedding photographer here. I absolutely love editing during the late-night hours. It is so peaceful and much more relaxed. I am getting ready to go to bed right now after editing, and it is almost 8 a.m. my time. I will get up at 2 p.m., maybe 3. On a normal day, if I am not shooting a wedding or working one of my other gigs, I will get up around 1. I only get up before noon if I am getting paid to. Story 20. I work from home without a fixed start time, so I wake up anytime between 6:45 and 8:30, depending on what time I went to sleep. Most times, I wake up at about 7:30. Story 21. I am always awake at 2 to 3 a.m. due to chronic nightmares. Then I try to fall back asleep until someone else is up in the house because I hate being by myself. Although I am starting to enjoy it, which is nice. Story 22. When I have to. The absolute latest I can get up to not be late for work is 7:10 a.m. On weekends, unfortunately, I am unable to sleep because my body wakes me up by 8 a.m., which is maddening. Story 23:06 a.m. daily. Although I cheated this morning, I stayed up late last night and stayed in bed until 7:30 a.m. But it is also a holiday weekend. Story 24. After a week of early shifts, I tend to wake at 4:30 the next few days. After that, I sleep late until about 6 or so. Seriously, thanks to all the night owls protecting us through the night against lurking evils. Story 25. 3:30. I work early overtime a lot, but when I don't, I still get up that early now. I get a solid 2 to 4 hours to myself before my family starts getting up. Story 26. I desperately wish I were a morning person. It is much more socially acceptable to be a morning person than a night owl. It does not matter what you do in the morning. When you get up around 5:30 to 6 o'clock, everyone assumes you are a hard worker. Story 27. Between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. for work, but on the weekend, I treat myself to getting up at 7 and staying in bed until noon. Story 28. 5 on weekdays because I have to be up an hour before my child if I want to get to work on time. 6 on weekends because I would rather wake up to an alarm than some loud noise my child has made that I have to investigate. Story 29. Depends on whether I work during the week or on weekends. Usually, I work out at 5 a.m. during the week before work or at 6 a.m. on weekends to sleep in. Story 30. 4 a.m. every day for 6 days for work. And on my one day off, I am usually able to sleep until 5 or 6 if I delay going to bed at my normal time. Story 31. If I have a free day, it is usually around 10 to 11 a.m. pretty consistently. Otherwise, it is whatever time I have to get up. Story 32. I live in the Sierra Nevada mountains where there is no noise or light pollution. Once the sun goes down, it is pitch black and absolutely silent. I usually go to bed between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. and fall asleep around 10 p.m. I am almost always wide awake by 6 a.m. Story 33. Retired here. Always have been a sound sleeper and early riser. Currently, the first wake-up is about 4 a.m. when the cat awakens me to put her breakfast down. The second wake-up is at 6 a.m. for my 5-mile walk, then coffee and newspaper. Without an alarm, I awaken naturally at about 7 a.m. Story 34. My puppy demands I wake up to serve her between 6:15 a.m. and 6:49 a.m. I am not a morning person. She used to not be a morning puppy. I am still not a morning person. I serve her and she goes back to sleep. I cannot. Story 35. Days that I work. 4:45 a.m. I work at a very large hospital and parking is difficult. Days that I am off. 8 to 9 a.m. Story 36. 5 to 6:30. The alarm for work goes off at 6:15. Sometimes I wake up before it goes off. I try to sleep in on weekends, but the latest I usually get up is 7:30. Story 37. Usually between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. If I wake up earlier, I usually get up and do things, then go back to sleep around 5 a.m. for another couple of hours. Story 38. I used to be nocturnal but got a second job that starts at 7 a.m. Now my poor brain does not know what to do, and no matter how early I go to sleep, I wake up after about 4 hours. I cannot go back to sleep for several more hours no matter what I do, so I am just out of luck without a nap most days. It is very frustrating. Usually, I wake up between 2:30 and 4:30 a.m. If I wake up at 2:30, I can sometimes catch an extra hour or so if I fall back asleep between 4:30 and 6 when I get up. I really want my trazodone back. I hate this country. Story 39. I am a baker, so around 2 to 3 o'clock, I take my dog outside, then get dressed. I live close, so I am at work by 4 o'clock. Story 40. Random because I sleep at random times, but usually after 6 to 14 hours of going to bed. sometimes 16 to 18 hours when life hits hard. Story 41. If I am scheduled in, I get up 90 minutes before I need to leave for work. If it is the weekend, I get up when my body wakes me. Story 42. Dawn. The chickens start yelling as soon as the sun comes up, and the bunnies need feeding also. I don't even need an alarm. Story 43. Morning? Very rarely. I work sporadically, meaning I get 6, sometimes 8 weeks off at a time. I will sleep until lunchtime if I do not have to get up for anything important. Story 44. I wake my partner up at about 4:45 and then, once I know they have gotten to work safely, I attempt to sleep around 6:45. I hope that helps. Story 45. 5:30 a.m. But I get out of bed at 6 a.m. I saw on a German television station that you should give yourself 30 minutes before fully getting active. Story 46. Whenever it is my turn to feed my baby, most recently at midnight. The baby also woke up at 6 o'clock due to a loud and smelly blowout. Story 47. If I am on schedule, I am up at 4:45 a.m. On my days off, I sleep in until about 9 a.m. or whenever my bladder wakes me up. Story 48. I used to sleep until 9, then had children, and now I have a little alarm clock who wakes me up at 6:50 wanting a bottle. Story 49. Weekdays, 4:15 a.m. I open my daycare at 6:30 a.m. and have a 45-minute commute. Weekends, between 5 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. No later, though. It depends on what time we go to bed. For example, 10 p.m. means a 5 a.m. wake-up, but 1 a.m. still means a 6:30 a.m. wake-up. Story 50. Up until very recently, I was a night owl and would sleep in until almost 10 a.m., and if I was not working, I could easily sleep until midday. A number of losses over the last 2 months, a long-term relationship and a family bereavement, plus a wholehearted attempt to finally beat the agoraphobia that has plagued my whole adult life have meant I am now in bed before 11 p.m. and up at 6 a.m. pretty much every day. I have lost too much to risk losing whatever meager life I have left. Story 51. For me, it depends on where and when I have to work on some days. But on usual days, depending on when I have fallen asleep, anywhere between 7 and 10 a.m. Story 52. It is 8:51 a.m. and I am struggling to go to sleep. I should get off of Reddit. Only 10 hours until my next shift. I do not know how you all get up so early. Night shifter for over 20 years and cannot imagine having to get up as early as some of you. Story 53. Monday to Friday, about 7:30 to 8 a.m. I work remotely, and my company operates from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. On weekends, I try to get up around 9 a.m., but I do sleep in if I feel like I need to. Story 54. Between 5:30 and 7 a.m., I usually wake up to use the bathroom. It is hard to go back to sleep after that, especially on a weekday. I usually take curcumin and AB complex vitamin with vitamin C, then lie down to rest my eyes and body a little longer until my alarms go off. By then, the vitamins have been absorbed, and I have less brain fog and feel more awake to start my day. Story 55. The alarm clock goes off at 2:45 a.m. Tuesdays through Fridays. On Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays, there is no alarm clock, and I get up around 7 a.m. naturally. Story 56. Monday through Friday at 5:30 a.m., except Thursdays, when it is 4:30 a.m. On weekends, there is no set time. This morning, I was up at 6:15 a.m. Story 57. 5:45 a.m. Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Sunday, and time off unless I have to go do something. Any later than that on a day off just leaves me tired. Story 58. Either 7:45 a.m. or 9:30 a.m., depending on when my lectures start. If I do not have lectures before noon, I usually sleep until 11 a.m. If I do not have any lectures at all, I sleep until noon. Story 59. 6 a.m. I used to hop right out of bed in high school like Link from Legend of Zelda. A link to the past and do push-ups. Now I crawl out of bed because I am in my 30s but still super active. I miss doing it, but I am way stronger now in general. Story 60. I work night shifts. I usually get to bed between 2 and 6 a.m. and sleep until around 12 p.m., sometimes longer. I am not a morning person, so this schedule works well for me. Story 61. I am retired. I usually wake up around 8 a.m. earlier in the summer. I am out of bed and starting my day by 8:30. Story 62. 6 a.m. on weekends. 4:30 a.m. on weekdays. I love walking my dog. No man-made noise is traveling through the airwaves. Cold breeze, birds chirping. Story 63. School days require time to get everyone ready. On weekends, I wake up out of habit. During vacations, I need 2 to 3 days to adjust and wake up a bit later. Story 64. I would sleep really late for most of my life. I got a puppy at 40 years old, 3 years ago, and she decided we should wake up at 6:30 every day. For the last month, I have been waking up by myself at 5:30. I am really growing to love being an early morning person. Story 65. 4 a.m. for me. I like the quiet time. I often play drums or work out for an hour, finish the dishes, pick up the living room, or just sit in contemplation. It gives me a good 2 hours before my 5-year-old needs to get up and get ready and makes the rest of the morning unhurried before work, as I can get everything done before 6. A newborn is coming in a few weeks, so that will probably change. Story 66. Either 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, or 6:30 to pee. Then, I get out of bed Monday through Friday at 7:30. On Saturday or Sunday, if we do not have plans, the same, except I do not get out of bed until 8:30 to 10 o'clock. Story 67. I am up at 5 o'clock every day, even on weekends. It helps me sleep better at night, and I really enjoy the quiet around the house while everyone else is still asleep. Story 68. I work from home but have a global sales role, so I can have calls at 7 a.m. with China or Australia. I generally set my alarm for 6:45 a.m., so I do not need to worry about the timing. Story 69. Between 4 and 5 a.m. every day, and it is my dog's fault. On my workdays, I leave at 5:30, so I am up at 4:30 or 5. My dog recognizes this as walk and breakfast time but does not understand days off, so she wakes me up every day at the crack of dawn. Story 70. Okay, so if I have to work, depending on my schedule, most days I wake up at 8 a.m. to take my medication. If I do not have to work, I do not really go to sleep. Story 71. I am still a student, and rather than focusing on discipline, I work on flexibility. You might see me sleep at 12:30 a.m. and wake up anywhere around 5:30 to 8 a.m. Also, you might see me sleep at 2 a.m. and still wake up around 5:30 to 8 a.m. So all in all, it depends. Story 72. On mornings when I wake up with the kids, I am out of bed doing mom tasks by 5:30. On mornings when I sleep in, I naturally wake up around 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Story 73. On days I don't have school, I wake up around 8:30 a.m. When I do have school, it's around 6 to 6:30 a.m. Recently, when I'm camping, I wake up at 9 a.m. Story 74. I set my alarm for sunrise and change it when needed for the seasons, but I always wake up 15 to 30 minutes before it goes off. I have some kind of weird internal timer. Anyway, I hate getting up in the dark. I read the latest news in bed and then get up right around sunrise. Story 75. 2:30 a.m. I leave for work at 4:30 a.m. In between those times, I like to relax and take my time getting ready, showering, eating, and listening to music. The last 30 minutes before I leave, I sit down, watch the news, and sip coffee. Story 76. Alarm 5:15 a.m., snooze 30 minutes. On weekends, usually sleep until 7 to 7:30 but will stay in bed as long as family life allows. Story 77. 7 a.m. Because that is the time the cat has decided is appropriate to jump on my chest every morning. He has great aim and always manages to land on my nipples, which, as it turns out, is a very effective alarm clock. He does not even do it because he is hungry. He has an automatic feeder. He just wants attention. Story 78. 5:30 a.m. 24/7, 365. I started setting an alarm clock for work every day when I was in my 20s. My quote was, "I'll sleep when I'm old." By my 40s, I stopped setting my alarm as my body clock had learned the time of day. A problem is when I travel, I always wake up at 5:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, no matter where I am in the world. Now at 63, retired and older, I get up at 5:30 and enjoy the solitude of the morning before my wife and grandkids, who live with us, wake up. The moral of the story is to change your wake-up times during your formative years. Story 79, 5:55 a.m. This gives me a few minutes before I have to wake my child at 6 to get ready for the bus. I will try to go to bed early and wake up at 5 so I can work out in the mornings. I have heard many people say it helps set the tone for the day and they prefer it over working out later. Story 80. Between 6:30 and 7 o'clock most mornings. Even if I do not want to, even on nights when I have nothing to do the next day or want to sleep in, I still wake up around that time for some reason. Story 81. 7:30 on workdays via alarm. 10:35 if I get to sleep in. Only God knows if I get to sleep in after an all-nighter. Story 82. 1.5 hours before my shift starts, usually at 9:30 a.m. If I do not have work, I wake up at 11 a.m. Story 83. First alarm is 5 a.m. That is my time to get myself going. Second alarm is 5:20 a.m. That is time to get the children up and ready for school. Third alarm is 6 a.m. If the children are sluggish, it is their last warning before potentially missing the bus. Fourth alarm is 6:15 a.m. Wake up the wife and children and say goodbye before going out the door. Story 84. 6:30. I have to leave for work at 7:30 to be there by 8. It's tough because I never get tired and want to go to bed until about 11:30 or 12, so I almost never get a full 8 hours of sleep. Could be worse though. Story 85. 4 years, I fell asleep somewhere between 11:30 p.m. and midnight, slept deeply, and woke up with my alarm, reluctantly still tired, at 7:30 a.m. On weekends, I might sleep in until 8:30 a.m. Recently, insomnia has been a problem among other things. I am going to bed a little earlier, shortly after 11 p.m., but most nights I wake up 6 to 7 times for no reason, not for a bathroom visit, and often awake for the day between 6 and 7 a.m., despite the alarm being set for 7:30 a.m. Story 86. On days I work out, I start at about 4 a.m., but I usually lie in bed feeling sorry for myself for at least half an hour. On days I do not work out, it is around 5:30 to 6 a.m. Story 87. I always wake up around 5 to 6 a.m. naturally and decide if I want to go back to sleep or relax until I am ready to get out of bed. Story 88. Before the baby, I was a student with non-obligatory classes, so waking up at 8:30 was fine most days. Now the baby has been waking me up after at least 3 wakings overnight. The baby will wake me anywhere between 6:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning. Given that I cannot bring myself to go to sleep before 1 a.m., it has not been good. Story 89. At 6 on the weekdays, precisely at 7:15 on the weekends. My alarm does not go off during the weekends. I just almost always wake up at that very specific time. This has happened consistently for months, and I have no clue as to why. Story 90. The wife works at 8:30, so we wake up at 7 a.m. On the weekend, we sleep in until 9, maybe 10 a.m. On the rare occasion that we tire ourselves to exhaustion, we sleep until 11 or 12. Story 91. Recently, I have been waking up around 6 a.m. every morning. I guess my biological clock got messed up after a few weeks of needing to go to the office daily, where I generally wake up at 6 a.m. Now, working more from home, where I can wake up at 8:30 a.m., I still wake up at 6 a.m. Story 92. 7 on weekdays and 8 on weekends. The cats allow an additional hour on weekends, but there is a hard cutoff at 8 for breakfast. Unconditional. Story 93. On weekdays, my body wants to wake up around 9:30 a.m. to be at work by 8 a.m. On weekends, I wake up at 6 or 6:30 a.m. Story 94. 13 years before retirement, I started an evening job from 2:15 p.m. to 11:45 p.m., and I still woke up every morning at 5:15 a.m., 5 minutes before my wife's alarm would go off. Now, I have been retired for almost 2 years, and I sleep in and get up between 6 and 7 a.m. every day. Story 95. I wake up around 6:30 for school and then hit the snooze button about 10 times. On weekends, I wake up at 8 because of my unreliable mental alarm clock. Story 96. I usually go to bed at about 1 a.m. but do not sleep and wake up at about 8 a.m. I hope this explains it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.